The Chrysler Building, the 77-story Art Deco crown in the heart of Midtown Manhattan, the most beautiful skyscraper America ever built, the one that was the tallest building in the world, the one with the stainless steel spire that every New Yorker can draw from memory. That building just got its owner thrown out onto the street. In January 2025, a New York court terminated the lease, and the company that controlled the Chrysler Building was evicted from one of the most famous addresses on the planet. Its value had already collapsed from a reported $800 million to a fire sale price of around $150 million. The owners had fallen more than $21 million behind on a single bill. And here's the part that makes no sense. The building wasn't even empty. Occupancy had climbed to nearly 86%. People wanted to be there. So how does a fully leased national landmark, an icon on the city's own postcards, bankrupt the people who own it and get them legally thrown out? The answer is hiding underground, in a contract signed in 1902. To understand it, you have to go back to the day someone realized they could own the dirt instead of the tower. This is the Chrysler Building at 405 Lexington Avenue between 42nd and 43rd Streets. 1,046 feet tall, completed in 1930. For 339 days, the tallest building in the world, and to a lot of people, including me, still the most gorgeous skyscraper ever raised anywhere. But before we get to the steel and the spire, you need to understand the one fact that breaks most people's brains about this building. Whoever owns the Chrysler Building does not own the ground it stands on. The tower and the land beneath it are two completely separate assets, owned by two completely different parties. You can own all 1,046 feet of that landmark and still be a tenant, a renter, on the dirt it's bolted to. And the landlord is not who you'd guess. It's a college. In 1902, before the Chrysler Building, before most of modern Midtown existed, the parcel of land was acquired by Cooper Union, a private college founded in 1859 by the industrialist Peter Cooper. The land was meant to be an endowment, a perpetual money machine to help keep tuition free. And here's the irony that this whole story turns on. Cooper Union is famous for its schools of architecture and engineering. The institution that owns the ground under America's most beautiful skyscraper trains the very people who design skyscrapers. They have collected rent on that dirt for over a century. That rent has helped fund the college for generations. Hold on to that arrangement, the split between the tower and the land, because it is the trap that every owner of this building has eventually stepped into. Walter Chrysler built the tower in 1930 as a family monument. It passed to the developer William Zeckendorf in 1953, who wanted it as a trophy. It moved through a string of investors during New York's brutal 1970s. An Abu Dhabi fund took a stake in 2008. Tishman Speyer ran it. And most recently, a partnership led by RFR Holding bought control in 2019 for around $151 million, a stunning discount on an icon. Every one of them inherited the same landlord, and the rent on that land was about to detonate. To understand why this contract became a financial weapon, you have to understand the building it was strangling, because the Chrysler Building is not a failure of engineering. It's one of the great triumphs of it, born out of one of the pettiest feuds in architectural history. In the late 1920s, two former business partners turned bitter rivals were each racing to build the tallest building on Earth. The architect Craig Severance was raising 40 Wall Street downtown. The architect William Van Allen was raising the Chrysler Building in Midtown. This wasn't a friendly competition. Plans were leaked. Drawings were spied on. Each man piled height onto his tower trying to beat the other. Down at 40 Wall Street, they stacked on extra floors in a risky bid for the record, pushing the structure close to the limits of its own foundations. And when it topped out, 40 Wall Street was the tallest building in the world for about a month. Because Van Allen had a secret. Hidden inside the Chrysler Building's crown, assembled in pieces where no one could see it, was a 125-foot spire. Once his rival had topped out and declared victory, Van Allen had the spire hoisted up through the roof and bolted into place in a single afternoon, adding well over 100 feet in one stroke and snatching the title of tallest building in the world overnight. It was an ambush, executed in steel. And the building Walter Chrysler got out of that feud was a love letter to the automobile age. The gargoyles jutting from the corners were modeled on car hood ornaments. Decorations on the 31st floor echoed radiator caps. And the crown, that unmistakable starburst of radiating arches sheathed in Narasta stainless steel, has never been copied because nothing else looks like it. The Chrysler Building held the world record for 339 days before the Empire State Building took it. But it never lost the title that actually mattered: the most beautiful. If a building this iconic getting its owner evicted is exactly the kind of story you came here for, take 1 second and hit subscribe. This channel digs into the landmarks where the architecture is flawless and the ownership is a slow motion disaster. And the Chrysler Building is the purest example we've ever covered. Now back to the story, because the weapon that finally took the building down wasn't time or weather. It was a number that quadrupled overnight. For most of the building's life, the ground rent Cooper Union charged was manageable. As recently as 2017, it sat under $8 million a year. Then, under the terms baked into the lease decades earlier, it detonated. In 2018, the annual ground rent leapt to $32.5 million, more than quadruple, in a single jump, and the contract wasn't done. It's scheduled to climb to roughly $41 million by 2028 and toward $55 million in the years after that. Sit with that. Before you pay for a single elevator repair, a single light bulb, a single security guard, a single dollar of property tax, you owe a college $32.5 million a year just for permission to keep your building standing on its own foundation. And that number only goes up. Now here's where the math turns lethal. An owner of an office building covers a bill like that by collecting rent from tenants. But the Chrysler Building, for all its fame, has been losing the fight for top-tier tenants for years. The interiors are nearly a century old. There are documented reports of brown water coming from the taps, elevators breaking down, electrical systems that aren't up to modern standard, a lobby ceiling so troubled that parts of it have been held together with tape, glamorous from the sidewalk, tired on the inside. And just a few blocks away, gleaming new glass towers offer the kind of modern, efficient, amenity-loaded space that the premium tenants, the hedge funds, the law firms actually want to pay top dollar for. So the owner is squeezed from both ends. The ground rent explodes upward. The rent they can charge tenants can't keep pace. And the gap between those two numbers is where an owner goes broke. That's exactly what happened to RFR. They reportedly poured $150 million into the building trying to make it work, even floated a plan to convert part of it into a hotel. It wasn't enough. They fell more than $21 million behind on the ground rent. In September 2024, Cooper Union issued a termination notice. RFR sued to stop it, even arguing that the college's handling of campus controversy had driven some tenants away. The court wasn't persuaded. In January 2025, a judge confirmed the lease was terminated and RFR was evicted. After more than a century, control of the Chrysler Building snapped back to the college that owned the dirt. And this is the gut punch detail that separates this story from every other troubled skyscraper. When RFR lost the building, occupancy was actually high, around 86%, by some reports effectively full. This was not a tower nobody wanted to work in. This was a tower nobody could afford to own. The land lease didn't care how many tenants were inside. It only cared about its own escalating number, and that number was bigger than the building could carry. The villain here isn't a cracked foundation or a falling facade. It's a contract. If you want more stories where the thing that kills a landmark is buried in the paperwork instead of the structure, subscribe and drop a comment telling me which famous building you think is sitting on a financial time bomb right now. The comment section on this channel has a frightening track record of being right. Now back to the story, because the question isn't whether the Chrysler Building survives, it's who's insane enough or smart enough to take it on next. Cooper Union put the building back on the market and hired the brokerage Savills to find a new operator. And despite everything, there is interest. Tishman Speyer, which owned the building back in the late 1990s and spent around $100 million then carefully restoring its Art Deco details, has been rumored to be circling a return. Other major players have looked, because whoever buys it inherits two things at once: the most prestigious address in New York and a $150 to $200 million repair bill on top of that monstrous ground rent. You're not just buying a building. You're signing up for the financial and physical rehab of a 95-year-old icon, while a college's rent meter keeps ticking upward in the background. But there is a path, and the city is full of proof it can work. The Woolworth building, once the tallest in the world, converted its top floors into luxury residences. The Flatiron Building, another untouchable New York icon, is being turned into boutique condos. Across the ocean, London's Battersea Power Station sat derelict for decades before being reborn as a thriving mixed-use destination, saved largely because its historic protection made demolition impossible and reinvention the only way out. The Chrysler Building is landmarked too. You cannot tear it down, and frankly, you could not if you wanted to. These early skyscrapers were so over-engineered with such massive steel skeletons that they were built to outlast almost anything. The way forward is not the wrecking ball. It is reinvention. And both things are true about the Chrysler Building. It is a masterpiece, the crown of the roaring 20s, born from a spiteful race to the sky, sheathed in a stainless steel spire that has never been equaled, a building that genuinely feeds the soul when you look up at it. It is also, on the balance sheet, a trap, an asset whose value collapsed from $800 million to $150 million, whose owner was evicted while it was nearly full, and whose ground rent climbs toward $55 million a year on dirt. The building's owner will never be allowed to buy. A national landmark sold 3 times in 6 years. A spire that stole the title of tallest building in the world in a single afternoon. A lobby ceiling held together with tape beneath one of the most photographed crowns on Earth. An owner thrown out of a building that was 86% full. And a contract from 1902 written to fund a college that has quietly outlived and bankrupted every titan who ever tried to own the tower on top of it. The Chrysler Building was built in an age when a skyline was a statement, not a spreadsheet. The tragedy is that the spreadsheet always shows up eventually, and this time it was hiding underground the whole time. Somewhere right now, another investor is staring at another irreplaceable landmark, running the numbers, and discovering that the most famous part of the deal is the part they will never actually own. Because the question buried under the Chrysler Building is the same one buried under every trophy in every city on Earth. What is it worth to own the most beautiful building in the world if you can never own the ground it stands on?